Hey, church. My name's Jeremiah Roberts. My journey with Jesus is not action packed. It instead consists of steadfastness in a slow growth with many steps back, but always focused and pointed towards Jesus. I was born in a family that honored Christ. My father is a pastor and currently serves as the head pastor at First Christian Church of Tyrone. I specifically believed for myself at the age of 7, and I was baptized on January 9th, 2000. What initiated my faith was reading the Left Behind series for kids. The Left Behind series was certainly interesting, but I think it made me fear hell more than it made me fear God. Even though that's not ideal, at least I was beginning to think and grow on my own instead of just through my parents' lens of faith. Throughout my childhood and teenage years, I was always involved in church. I went to Georgia Tech and served in the U.S. Navy for 8 years as a submarine officer. During college, I met my wife, Pam. Until then, I always tied my faith to my parents, but I used their experience and their faith probably as a crutch. I had never really studied scripture or learned to grow on my own. I relied heavily on what my dad taught me through his preaching. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I knew that God had something more for me and that there was something I could gain from experiencing Jesus on my own. During the Navy, we were stationed in Hawaii and Guam. It was difficult to find a church home while we were in those remote locations. While in Hawaii, we were part of a church, but never really felt connected because I was gone so often and we had no life group. When we were in Guam, we did not have many connections outside the Navy at all, so I would say it was a spiritually lonely time. After a few years of being stationed in those two areas, we moved back to the mainland, to Charleston, South Carolina. In Charleston, we found an incredible church and incredible friends, and while there, I really began experiencing God and learned that He had plans for me, bigger than just living and reacting to things coming our way. Until then, I would describe our life as just coasting, doing well enough, but not really living in a way that intentionally brought honor and glory to Christ. However, in 2019, God started to bring to life a couple of things that have changed the trajectory of our family and spiritual journey. At that time, I was the only one working in our family, and as my wife stayed home with the kids. We made enough money, but we never had discipline to save or plan. That changed when a good friend of ours introduced us to Dave Ramsey, and we took his financial peace class. We jumped into the strategy, the principles, and in 11 months, we paid down all $68,000 of our debt. In that time, we grew closer to each other, our life group, and our church in Charleston. In 2020, we were moving from Charleston back here to Noonan, and we needed to sell our house. We had just finished paying off the debt. We had very little cash saved, just over $8,000, and we had an emergency. Our crawl space flooded, did a significant amount of damage, cost us right at $7,800. It was stressful, but it was pretty much exactly all the money we had in the world. We had it minus a few $100s. I remember my wife and I looked at each other and we said, wow, what a nice coincidence. We have just enough to make it. So we paid the bill with cash and moved on. A week or so later, we sold the house, and then we had $1,200 in the bank. And just like a clockwork, we had another emergency of $1,100. So we paid it again with cash, save a few $100. I know it may not seem important when I say the numbers out loud, but this was a serious season of fear for us. But we had the money, and we had the opportunity to not trust Jesus and not pay it with cash. But instead, we decided to use the cash. We looked at each other again and said, wow, what a great coincidence. Right, but looking back, none of these things are coincidence. God had been changing us during the past few years and put us in that position to test our faith to see if we were ready to fully trust Him. Only after looking back did we see how well He was taking care of us. We learned that He truly does guide our path, and trusting Him with money for us has just been the start of trusting Him with everything else. God taught me flexibility and faithfulness. God taught me that He is enough, and to live that out requires putting my trust in Him, Jehovah Jireh. God truly has been enough for our family, and even as we paid down the debt, got out of debt, accomplished milestones that the world may consider to be success, we turned our focus to God and began experiencing His love in new ways. We've shared our financial journey now as financial peace coordinators with over 60 people across 7 classes, and God has allowed us to spread the hope of Jesus through the discipline of finances. We've been at SouthCrest Church ever since moving back to Noonan in 2021. I've been a Christian now for 24 years and continue to grow. Specifically, the recent study that our church just finished called Rhythms Over Resolutions came at a perfect time for our family. God is calling us to build better habits and model these for our kids. and I appreciate the leadership of SouthCrest Church for shepherding us in this topic. The group study hit home for our family, and I can see God's plan coming through the rhythms we've been building. Reflecting over the last 24 years of my walk with God, I can confidently say that when I put my trust in God, his love and faithfulness have been overwhelming. Consistent faith in the living hope of Jesus has been the key ingredient. Day to day, it does not feel like I'm changing all that much, but now that I'm over 20 years in the journey, I cannot imagine life without him. Thank you.